Please remember to like, subscribe, and rate on your favorite podcast platform.
Trigger warning. This podcast contains discussion of emotional, physical, and sexual abuse, and includes explicit language. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
Thankfully, there was a voice inside of me that just kept saying, just shut up and listen, Valorie. And after about 2 hours, she finally took a deep breath and said, I want to tell you something I haven't told anybody that I just realized last night. And that is I was sexually abused by Larry Nassar.
Without healing, traumatic experiences can have an enormous impact on defining who we are and who we will become.
Wade Robson and myself, James Safechuck, are both survivors of childhood abuse. In this podcast, we're talking with survivors, trauma specialists, and advocates,
highlighting the many resources available in order to inspire the brave steps to starting or continuing the healing journey.
This is From Trauma
to Triumph. Hey, what's up, everyone? And welcome to our podcast, From Trauma to Triumph, with myself, Wade Robson, and James Safechuck. Today, we have a really powerful guest, Valorie Kondos Field, or as she is affectionately known, Miss Val. A former professional ballerina, she's never tumbled, flipped, or personally played any type of organized sports, and yet she's been able to craft a legendary gymnastics coaching career through curiosity, creativity, attention to detail, and unwavering care for the overall well-being of her athletes. For Miss Val, it's not about winning and losing. It's about choreographing your life and owning the choices you make.
Miss Val is the retired head coach of the 7-time NCAA champion, 22-time regional, and 18-time Pac-12 champion UCLA women's gymnastics team. Miss Val was inducted into the UCLA Athletic Hall of Fame in 2010. Miss Val also coached and mentored the young women of the UCLA gymnastics team during the revelation of Larry Nassar's sexual abuse of female gymnasts. In her book, Life is Short, Don't Wait to Dance, Miss Val shares personal stories, anecdotes, and lessons learned throughout the 37-year career of a dancer, choreographer, turned athletic coach.
So, Miss Val, thanks again for being here with us today. We just really appreciate you taking the time and excited to chat with you.
I'm so excited. I have been a fan of both of yours for so long.
All right, so we'll kick it off with, you wrote this amazing book, and the book is called Life is Short, Don't Wait to Dance, Advice and Inspiration from the UCLA Athletics Hall of Fame coach of 7 NCAA championship teams. So I just wonder if you can speak to what motivated you to write the book.
I have a very clear answer for that one. I started doing speaking engagements maybe a year or two before I wrote the book. And every time I did a speaking engagement, somebody would come up to me afterwards and say, where can I buy your book? Yeah. And I said, I don't have a book. And I honestly felt that what did I have to say that hadn't already been said? Because I'm a voracious reader. And what I've learned is that anything that is truthful, really truly truthful of mankind and history and philosophy has been passed down since the dawn of man. So what do I have to say that's new? And then my girlfriend said to me, she said, that is true, but every generation needs new people to put these truths into our own vernacular so that we understand them more easily. So I said, okay, I'll write a book. So then I'm writing the book, and halfway through it, I'm writing it with my co-author, Coop. Halfway through it, I'm like panicking. I'm like, I'm not writing the book. And he says, why? And I said, Coop, people reading this are going to expect all this wisdom from this 7-time national gymnastics champion coach. And they're going to start reading this and they're going to realize I'm a total whack job. And he looks at me very seriously. He goes, Miss Val, you are a whack job. That's why you need to write the book. because you give all of us permission to release our inner whack jobs. And I was like, okay, I'll write the book.
Oh, that's great.
Fantastic. Yeah. We're all a little crazy.
Yeah.
What's great about the book too is you do see how you apply that. So even though some of them are like, tried and true concepts, you get to see how you applied it to your work. So it's very, it's very informative, and it's a great read.
Thank you. I also felt it was important to show how someone who wasn't in a particular area, like everybody knows I did not grow up in the world of sport. I was a ballet dancer. I was never a gymnast, but how I was able to bring forth these quote unquote truths of success, how to be successful in life, to athletics. And I especially became successful at it when I was true to who I was and my own vernacular and vocabulary, and coaching these great athletes, these gymnasts, from a performance and a dance perspective, versus trying to talk their talk, which I didn't know their talk because I've never done gymnastics.
Yeah. And I'm sure it might have evolved during the process of writing, but if you had to boil it down to kind of one hope that you had for the book, like what people would really kind of take home from the book, was there a sense of that as you set out?
Yes, because the thing that I want people to get through the book is that it's really fun in life to make a plan for your life, but life rarely happens in plan A. And to be open to things that come to you, and when life opportunity presents itself to you, to not shy away from it because you feel inadequate. And I honestly do feel that in anything you do in life, if you bring a really good work ethic combined with enthusiasm toward that work ethic, you can achieve basically anything. And I made a ton of mistakes, but I was excited to figure them out and to work, to move forward and figure out how to not make the same mistakes. And so I want the book just to speak to people. I've had a lot of people say to me, young adults say to me, they never thought they had what it would take to be a coach. And then they read my book and they're coaching now.
I think what's great too is the examples of you trying something that's new for you and trying it in and sort of like just deep diving into something, like the way you sort of deep dived into coaching. You hadn't necessarily coached gymnastics, but you took the opportunity, and you said when opportunities present themselves, but I also get a sense that you create your own opportunities. I know opportunities do present themselves, but you're very proactive in going after things as well. So I thought that was a great lesson for me and for other people as well, to watch, to see that happen.
Yeah. And I do agree with that. And it's something I think about all the time. If our destiny is already planned out, then what is this free choice and freedom of choice all about? But I do agree with that. I do believe that every day we need to prepare ourselves, and we need to go after those things that make our hearts sing and that bring us life. But what I find I coached 18 to 22-year-olds for the majority of my adult career. And what I found was they got stuck in thinking, well, this is what I always have thought I wanted to be when I grew up, so I can't get off that trajectory. Yeah. I think Kyla Ross is a really good example of that. She's one of the greatest gymnasts that ever has done our sport. Her whole life, she wanted to be an engineer. And she's a fantastic student, brilliant student. And just this last year, she thought, maybe, I don't know if I'd be any good at coaching, but maybe I'll like it. And it's the first time in her life she's ever thought about that. And she's now the volunteer coach at Arkansas for Jordan Weber. And she's just checking it out. And I was like, yes, that's what life is about.
Right.
Do you think that's something that you got from your parents, or that was inherent in yourself? Because I'm thinking back to when you wanted to go into dance and your father was like, go for it. So was that something you sort of learned from your parents?
That was a huge moment in my life when my dad was an artist, and his parents came from Greece. And so they immigrated over here, and, they were the typical parents where you've got to have a job that you know what you're going to be able to make money at. And when he told his parents he wanted to go to art school, his parents gave him their blessing. So when I graduated high school and I knew that I wanted to go to college and my parents wanted me to go to college, and so I started going to college, plus I was dancing professionally. And my dad just said, honey, if you do both of them, you're going to do both of them half-assed. So if you want to dance, now's the time to dance. You can always go back to school. And he gave him permission to not feel guilty about not following this very rigid path.
We should learn, and our audience should learn, as far as, you being seemingly kind of this outsider that came into the world of gymnastics to a degree. So how did that happen? How did that transition happen from you being in the dance world to becoming a gymnastics coach?
I was dancing professionally. I was starting my first season with the Washington Ballet, and I heard that UCLA gymnastics needed a dance coach and a choreographer. And I loved gymnastics. I'd never taken gymnastics, and I really missed school. I was 22 years old and I'd not gone to college. And I just figured, what the heck? And I found out who the head coach was. I picked up the phone and I made the ask. And I told him, I've had 17 years of classical ballet training, and I'm a choreographer, and I hear you need one. And he said, well, we don't have a salary, but if you've not gone to college yet, we can give you a full scholarship to go to school. I was like, done, and done. And so I was the assistant coach for a while. Then I graduated. I was going to become a journalist. And the athletic director called me in her office and just said, we would like for you to be the new head coach. And I laughed out loud and I reminded her that I didn't know anything about gymnastics. Mm-hmm. And she looked at me. We called her the ice queen. She was just like that. And she said, I trust that you'll figure it out. I'm like, oh, okay. Can I have any more than that? So like I said, I made a lot of mistakes along the way, but I think my co-author of my book, Coop, told me quite a few times that one reason why UCLA gymnastics has its own look and feel and its own brand is because I came to work every day with fresh eyes, because I didn't grow up in a gym. Right. I didn't grow up in this world.
There's so much of your, what you've learned through your life and career so far, and the wisdom that has come from that I'm excited for us to get into. And I think an important piece to bring in now is, our podcast being, mostly for survivors of child abuse, to bring in this piece where your life, your career ended up intersecting with survivors to a degree. You were the coach of the UCLA gymnastics team during the horrific revelation of Larry Nassar's sexual abuse of female gymnasts. So if you can just tell us how you first learned about that, how that came up.
Oh, I'll never forget that night. I was at home in my living room with my husband watching 60 Minutes, and up on the screen were three women in their 30s, and they were talking about being sexually abused by the USA gymnastics team physician, Larry Nassar. And two of those three I had coached at UCLA in the early 2000s, Jamie Dancher and Jeanette Antolin. And I literally was just catatonic. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And then I was filled with this sense of guilt. Like, why didn't I know? Why couldn't I do something? I didn't do anything. I didn't know. So as soon as it was over, I called both of them and just said, I was so incredibly sorry. I didn't know when you were on the team. And they both said the same thing. They said, Miss Val, they were in their 30s at this point. And they said, we didn't know till just a few months ago. We hadn't put together the pieces and connected all the dots until a few months ago. And the thing that hit me in that moment, I was going back because they came to UCLA right after the 2000 Olympics. And I was going back then through all of the years that I'd coached and all the student athletes that had come in since that time. And it just hit me that you should never and can never assume someone's mental health ever. And it was from that moment forward that I kind of moved into my coaching with a bit more awareness to the student athletes and what they were doing, what they were not doing, what they were saying, what they were not saying, how they were acting.
Right. And how did it then continue to play out? I mean, you were still actively coaching, you were there, and just that whole experience, how did it play out? And then you continuing to interact with your current gymnasts. And
it played out in the fact that I obviously felt that we had probably Larry Nassar survivors on our team. I didn't know who they were, but in the time that I had been at UCLA, we had 49 national team members from the USA national team. So obviously the odds are in favor that we're going to have some of those survivors on our team.
Right.
And it was in our competition seasons, January through April. It was in February. We were heading to Arizona for a competition. And Jordan Weber was not on the plane because she was going to Michigan to give her impact statement in court. And I just felt the need to address this with the team, even though as a coach, one of the things that you learn is it's up to you to not invite distraction to competition season. Part of your job is to alleviate any distraction. Well, I did the exact opposite. So I felt it was super important to address this life issue that was more important than gymnastics. So the night before the competition, had a team meeting. Jordan was in Michigan, and I said, let's just talk about what's going on. Jordan is not here because she missed the bus. Jordan's not here because she's doing the hardest thing she's ever done in her life. And that is to give her impact statement, looking in the eye of the man who abused her, sexually abused her. So, and I know that a lot of you are following this case, and I know that a lot of you know a lot of the survivors that have come forward. And I just want to ask you how you're feeling. There were a few girls that were fidgeting a bit. And then I said, I want us all to talk about how we're going to welcome Jordan back tomorrow, because she's not going to want the spotlight on her, but we need to embrace her, you know? And Pang Lee spoke up, and she said, you know what, Sal? Teal is the color to celebrate survivors. And she said, how about if we go out tomorrow and get teal ribbon? We all wear teal ribbon on our hair. I said, great. So we did that, and just that became our go-to for the rest of the season for the girls.
Right. Beautiful. When you mentioned that piece of, you know, it's supposed to be your job to, or a coach's job to keep distraction out of, but you felt that this was important life issue to talk about. Did you receive any pushback from you bringing it to the forefront?
I didn't receive pushback from our team. Right. I received some pushback from other coaches around the country because the talk was UCLA is wearing teal ribbons to celebrate the survivors of, you know, all sexual abuse survivors, but especially for the Larry Nassar survivors. And then a few of the coaches called me saying that they knew that they had survivors on their team as well, but they didn't want to address it till after season. And which is fine. You know, it's like if those athletes wanted to come forward and tell their coach, that's fine. And if they didn't, that's fine. But I'm like, okay, this is so personal right now. You know, you do you, and we're going to do us. And I'm not trying to make anybody feel badly or bully them into having to wear teal ribbons. That's just what we're choosing to do. So it for our team, it was a sense of relief that we were talking about it.
Yeah.
Did you have anybody else come then after that, after sort of like being open about the conversation and disclose to you later?
Yes. In the book, and it's one of the most poignant moments of the TED Talk that I've done. Kyla Ross, one of the greatest gymnasts that's ever done the sport. She was a sophomore, and Kyla Ross does not talk a lot. You know, she's not one, she'll be the one sitting in the back, not the one gabbing to everybody. And I've always had an open door policy with my office, and a lot of the athletes would just drop by during the course of the day. So Kyla Ross drops by during this time. This is like maybe 2 weeks after this Arizona meet.
Mhm.
And she starts talking just about school and her family and her boyfriend and graduate school and this and that. And I'm thinking, what is going on? Why is Kyla like all worked up talking about all this stuff? And what am I supposed to say? And thankfully, there was a voice inside of me that just kept saying, just shut up and listen, Valorie. Don't try to fill in the awkward pauses. Just let her talk at her pace. And after about 2 hours, which was, I mean, this is someone who didn't talk. She talked for 2 hours.
Wow.
She finally took a deep breath and said, I want to tell you something I haven't told anybody that I just realized last night. And that is I was sexually abused by Larry Nassar.
Wow.
And she very quickly said, but I'm not a victim.
Right.
And I said, okay, would you agree that you were victimized? And she thought about it and she said, yes. And she said, I just refuse to let him determine how I'm going to live my life from here on out. I said, okay, how can I help you? Let's talk about this, because we need to, you realize this just not even 24 hours ago. So how can I help you? So talked about that, asked her if she wanted to share it with the team, got her seeing, a counselor on campus, and she was very open to all of it. And 2 months later, we win the national championship. And after all of the hoopla and the confetti and the awards and the crying and the hugging, and I'm picking up my bag to go walk to the bus, Kyla Ross comes up to me and she said, I just want you to know that one of the biggest reasons why we won this championship was because you chose to address the elephant in the room. And she said, you gave me words to attach to my emotions that I didn't know how to formulate in my brain. And she said, Miss Val, I literally felt myself walk taller as the season went on, simply because I had been hurt.
So powerful. I mean, there's so much to unpack there. It's first, you addressing it was brave and amazing. And then that you listened, that you gave them space. And for Survivor to tell somebody, it's always difficult to tell somebody, but especially in the beginning stages, they need to feel safe and heard from the person to be able to come out to somebody. And so that she felt that you were safe and listening speaks volumes, that she chose you to tell. I think that's amazing. And that you instinctively let her speak and you knew her well enough. And then you're just sort of listening to yourself and your instincts and saying, okay, there's something there and I'm just going to let her speak. Because a lot of people would interject or, try to guide it.
Right.
It's powerful. And it's a great lesson for people is to listen to somebody, be in tune with who you're talking with or who you're speaking with, and then let them speak, be there for them.
I think that part of that too is being, what I have a problem with, which I've had to work on, is not filling in the awkward silences.
Mm-hmm.
But the awkward silences, it's not really silence. It's still emotion and energy that's coming from that person. And just to allow them to sit in that.
Yeah.
And when you fill in the awkward silence, you're forcing it. You're rushing it. I don't know if you both feel this way because you're both parents, but as an adult figure, as the coach, the mentor, the leader in this, I think that the initial feeling is I need to have an answer. I need to know what to say. I have to have the right answer. I have to be able to guide her correctly.
Yeah.
And that's when I get like this, wanting to fill that silence versus I have no idea what I'm doing. I've never been approached by someone that's telling me this. All I can be is like, let's be raw and real. Kyla, what else would you like me to know and how can I help you?
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, it's rare for children, teenagers of any kind, I feel like, to be fully seen and fully listened to and treated as full human beings, right? And then I imagine, I mean, it's definitely the case in whether it be in dance or any sort of sport, where when you've got this relationship, this power dynamic between coach or teacher and student, that it's also rare in that situation for the children, the teenager, to be really listened to and really, you know, their opinions, their feelings, their thoughts validated and cared for and taken into consideration. So powerful for any child or teenager, and then a whole nother level of powerful for a survivor of abuse to really be seen and really be heard. And obviously that's what she expressed to you at the end of the season, you know, just that simple power of like, you saw me and you heard me and you listened to me and you took action, based upon what you had received from her and others, right? And what was important to them in that role of coach, where it's like, it can be just a dictatorship, right?
And you know what? I think that's such an important message, lesson that you just said. I was able to take action and help her because she trusted me to tell me the truth. And with the student athletes on our team whom I haven't really been able to help over the years, or that I didn't have a great relationship with, we didn't have that. I didn't know what was going on because I hadn't developed a relationship with them that they trusted to tell me, or for whatever reason, they wouldn't tell me. And I'm looking back at some of the hard things that I went through as a coach with these incredible athletes, like Olympians, that were very difficult to coach because they came in with a lot of anger and history. But I was able to help them because they took the leap of faith and just told me, shared their pain.
Right. As far as your approach and willingness and openness to really look at them and to really listen to them and take action upon their thoughts and their feelings, was that an evolution for you as a coach? I mean, did you feel like that you were like that from the beginning, open to that from the beginning, or did that change over time?
No, I didn't know what the heck I was doing in the beginning. I just tried to be like all other coaches. And one thing that I love about this period of time we're in right now is that we're all talking about mental health and wellness.
Yeah.
I'm teaching a graduate school class at UCLA on transformational coaching and leadership versus transactional coaching and leadership. And we all grew up, even in the dance world, with transactional teachers, coaches, where if you do this, then you'll get that. So, you know, it's the reward system in transactional versus this is coaching someone or teaching someone to help them transform into better versions of themselves.
You know, all abuse happens when there's a power differential at play, right? Of some kind, right? And in the case of this Larry Nassar situation, you know, he's the doc, right? Doctor knows best, is the idea. I wonder if you have any thoughts about, again, building upon this piece of, you know, kids or students being, you know, seen and not heard, and that sort of idea, and do what the coaches say, do what the organization says, do what the professionals, the elders say. Do you feel like any of that sort of culture, maybe as it existed, played any role in the Larry Nassar abuse being able to go on for as long as it did?
I think one of the issues is that there's only one avenue to get onto the national team, and that was through the ranch, the Caroli Ranch. So it's like other sports, you've got all these different avenues and arms to get on to the USA softball national team. It's not one training center. And it wasn't even the Olympic training center where, you know, we could have eyes on them. It was at this ranch out in the middle of nowhere in Houston. I have to give the disclaimer, I've never been to the ranch. and I've never been a USA gymnastics coach. I'm someone from the outside that coached 49 national team members, and they all told me the same stories. But I feel that the reason it was the perfect environment for a pedophile, because the head of this unit, Marta Caroli, trusted very, very few people. And so there wasn't someone that these girls could go to that they could just say whatever they wanted to say to. The only person that was really nice to them, that would talk to them as humans, was Larry Nassar.
Yeah.
Right.
Talk about grooming. I mean,
Right.
And so they didn't have someone to go to, what we call, that safe space to be able to go to.
Right. Like he was set up as the safe space.
Right.
Right. That was the idea.
And it was no big deal for him to take someone, a young girl, into the back room without any other adult there, without any other person there, and do whatever he wanted to do.
Right. And the girls were, from what I understand, experiencing like the environment there was somewhat abusive, not sexually abusive, but abusive in like they're told what to do, they're sort of demeaned. And so it's this environment where they don't have anybody, like you said, that listens to them, that's there for them. And then he sort of steps in and he goes, well, I'm that person. And he provides that sort of loving and care to them. And then he uses it to abuse them, which is so often the case. So often the case when there are abusers.
Yeah.
Right.
Through that whole experience of the Larry Nassar situation, the revelation, and the whole experience of it playing out, what were some of the particular things you feel like you learned from it as a coach and as a human? And again, I think you've spoken to it, but if there's anything else that comes up for you.
As a coach, as a mentor, as someone that oversees them, to really understand that what someone is, to just let them talk and give them that space to be able to say whatever they want to say. And then, because I'm not a psychologist, I am not a physician, take that information to someone who is a professional in that area. And, I think that what's happened now is the pendulum has swung so far the other direction for college coaches. All the college coaches that I've talked to say that they feel that they've got this target on their back, that anything that it's very difficult to hold athletes accountable now, because that is translated to abuse.
Right.
And we have to let that pendulum swing back a little bit. And I think the only way to do that is through really open communication, like you have with your children. I'm imagining when they tell you your mom was so mean and she didn't let me have dessert, and they just think she's the most horrible human on the planet, but you talk them through it. Well, tell me how you were feeling.
Right.
But I think the thing that I am still learning, and the thing that I would coach myself up on, was giving them time to talk.
I also, wonder, for whether it be survivors of abuse or any kind, or just any child or young person who has been through anything that is traumatic or scary or painful, that, might be looking, whether they know or not, for someone to talk to about it, right? Someone to share this with instead of feeling so isolated. When it comes to this sort of dynamic that we're talking about, coach, athlete, teacher, student, choreographer, dancer, with that power differential, where there can sometimes be, again, this kind of dictatorship sort of relationship, and it's all about winning. If it's purely about winning and being strong all the time and that sort of thing, obviously that can really push someone away from taking the leap into trying to be vulnerable, right, with their coach or teacher, whatever it may be. I guess I wonder if you can just speak to that culturally, as far as this kind of relationship, when it comes to about winning and all that thing, how do you draw that line between, training people and wanting them to be strong and teach them how to move through failures and challenges, and then also it being okay to make mistakes, to fail, to be scared, to be vulnerable, all those things.
I think in any situation where there is this hierarchy of power, whether it's parenting, coaching, right, whether you're a business CEO, whomever, it's important to define what winning looks like. So in my ask, okay, what does winning look like to the team? Winning the national championship on April 23rd. Got it. Okay. Now let's talk about success, because all winning is not success. So let's talk about what success beyond the win will look like. So through these next 8 months that we're all going to be together training for this win to win a national championship, let's talk about how we're building ourselves into being champions in life that are going to go out and make the world a better place through this fun process of trying to win a national championship. But success beyond the win. And so it's like when you're a parent, statistics show that most young people quit sports. They decide to quit sport in the car ride home, because that's when they're sequestered with mom or dad that just pummels them with questions about the win. Did you win? How many points did you score? How much playing time did you get? Why aren't you playing as good as so-and-so is? And I always encourage parents to shift that thought process and ask if you're really excited about helping your child develop into a champion in life, success beyond the win, that soccer game, then ask questions about the process. What'd you learn today? Did you help a teammate? What did you learn from a teammate? And then, like, one of my favorite questions to ask kids is, how'd you figure out how to have a really good attitude and have fun at working really hard at that thing you don't like to do? Let's make that our goal today. Let's make that our definition of success, not how many points you scored.
Right.
And then talking to them, I hate the word failure. I don't believe it exists. I think a really mean-spirited person made it up to make us all feel badly. And to teach people, this is a big thing I had to teach our gymnasts, because they're in a sport that's based on perfection, the perfect 10. There's no such thing as perfection. And to help them understand that a mistake, what they've learned and grown up with this F word, failure, a mistake is simply information. And if you can just make the mistake, take a deep breath, analyze it, what am I going to do differently this next time to have a different result? Then you're shortening that time between the mistake and recovery, failure and recovery, versus taking it personally. I suck. I'm not good enough. All of that negative stuff happens when we make a mistake.
You might have just answered it, but that was the question that I had, because I find it fascinating how athletes can, when they make a mistake, just boom, quickly move on to the next thing. And then they have to focus on, being successful, right away. They're, performing. How do you do that? Because I so often just get hung up on the mistakes I've made, and they come and they'll haunt me years later in the middle of the night. And I have such trouble with this. And I just find it like a superpower. It seems like a superpower for athletes who can just be like, all right, boom, that was a mistake. I'm on to the next one. And, the successful ones are able to do that. How can I do that?
This is so good, James. This is so good. It is a superpower. It is a super skill. It's not something you're born with. It's something that you're taught. So you're taught to feel badly about making a mistake. Okay. So we have to reverse that. And it's a skill, repetition. And hopefully, growing up, people will have a teacher or a coach, like with my student athletes, they fall on beam and they get this depressed look and they just feel horrible. I will not spend, like, as quickly as I can get to them, I go, come here. talk to me about, what were you thinking about right before you did the skill? Oh, I was thinking about don't fall. Okay, well, that didn't work. Okay, so let's use this as information. Let's talk about what you're going to think about next time you do that skill to make it differently. So you don't let them marinate in this pity party of I suck. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, James, when you become an adult,
Yeah.
you got to be your own best mentor and your own best teacher. And you've got to not allow yourself that space of a pity party, of negative speak.
Yeah.
Right. So it's immediately to what's the lesson here? What's the information? What can I gain from this? What is
right? Don't make it personal. It's not personal. The thing is that the only reason you're making a mistake is because you're brave enough and courageous enough to try something,
right?
To do something. Because if you're sitting on your couch at home watching soap operas, you're not going to be making very many mistakes. And what a great skill to develop. And the only way that life can teach us how to develop this skill is through making mistakes.
Right. So you immediately analyze it, you depersonalize it, you look at it as information. What happened? What was the outcome? And then what can I do next time? And then you move on and you practice that. Like anything, any skill needs practice.
It's a skill. Yeah.
I am going to be practicing that a lot. It just seems like a great superpower.
It is it's a great way of going through life because, I mean, I don't mean to get morbid here, but none of us know when our expiration date is.
Right.
And I don't want to waste one day on energy that is self-deprecating and beating myself up. I have no problem admitting when I'm wrong. I have no problem apologizing profusely and sincerely to someone. And it's hard. It is a skill, but to be able to even apologize to yourself, like I ate crap yesterday. Okay. And I feel like crap today because of it. Okay. I'm not going to beat myself up about it. What am I going to do right now to make a difference? I'm going to drink a glass of water and I'm going to go for a walk. Great. Let's do that. What's the next right step forward?
Right. Yeah. And that, deprogramming from what can be these huge influential roles, people in our lives, parents, other teachers, whatever it may be, that have maybe, taught us the opposite, right? Taught us to beat the crap out of ourselves. One of the key ones for me, obviously, Michael, my abuser, who was, one of, if not the largest figure to me in my young life. That, one of the key phrases that he said to me over and over again, and that always stayed with me, was be the best or be nothing at all.
Yeah.
Oh no.
There was nothing else. There's no in between. There's no be the best or be nothing.
Yeah.
And so that was, one of the ways I was programmed so early, so it's absolutely possible. And I've been doing it, but, to deprogram that, to unlearn that.
That's why I think it's so vitally important to define success.
Right.
What does success look like for you today, Wade? As a dad, as a husband, as a professional, as a human, what does it look like? And then take time at the end of the day to debrief and go, you know what? I had a good day, but I could do this a little better. I'm going to do that better tomorrow. Right. And especially with kids, we don't want kids dropping out of sport or dropping out of dance, dropping out of anything because they aren't the best.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's define success for you. What does that look like for you today?
Yeah,
right. And let it be an ever-changing thing as well, right? Let it be ever evolving what that definition is. Yeah.
And that's why when we talk about what is winning going to look like for us? Okay, yeah, great. It's fun to win a national championship, but so much of that winning is out of our control because we're in a sport that's judged, whatever. I always felt that my definition of success, I would feel fully satisfied at the end of a competition season if I could leave the season with no regrets. Because then that means every day I'm having to show up, hit the refresh button, how am I going to be my best self today? And how am I going to get 1% better today? And at the end of the season, if I can look back on those 8 months that we spent together and say, you know what? I have very few regrets. I've had a great season, regardless of where we stand on the podium.
Yeah.
But I remember coming home one time and telling my parents that they cast a new ballet. And my dad said, did you get the lead?
Mm.
And I just was deflated. And my mother said, oh, what's the ballet about?
Mm-hmm.
And I got excited.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing I just said, where parents asking questions about the end result. Did you get the lead? Because if you didn't, then you suck. Versus my mom saying, oh my gosh, what's it about? This is going to be so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. I was going to ask them, and as far as you kind of evolving into this wisdom and this perspective as a coach and as a human, how that related to your experience growing up. And so as to what you just alluded to, do you feel like you kind of had a window of both?
Mm-hmm. And thank God I had my mother, because it allowed me to see just how negative and horrible my father was at times, even though I just said it earlier in this, that he gave me the freedom to dance. But,
It's all there. It's like, we're so complex. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I chose to never be one. Interestingly, with the survivors, the Larry Nassar survivors, as well as a lot of the gymnasts that came to us from the national team that talked about the verbal and emotional abuse, those athletes that had parents that treated them just as normal young girls growing up and did not put all of this pressure on them to be Olympians or to be the best, they don't have as much residual trauma as the ones whose parents were on them constantly about making the Olympic team and being the best.
Right.
The love from their parents was not conditional on them making the national team or them being the USA champion or them being an Olympian. Unconditionally.
Right.
And they had parents that told them, you can quit anytime you want. You can't quit on a bad day.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the season, if you want to quit, you can quit.
Yeah. Just want to back up a little bit. Also, one of the points that I just kind of wanted to double down on that you made that I think is so powerful when we were talking about mistakes, and you saying, that when you've made a mistake, it's because you've tried something new, right? That you've stepped outside of your comfort zone, right? Because if you weren't doing that, there would be nothing to make a mistake within, right? If you were just staying completely safe and within the known. So based on that idea and that wisdom, it's like mistakes are actually the evidence of your success.
Right. I mean, courage is taking a step toward a goal without any guarantee of the result. That's what gives us those butterflies in us where we got to go take that step. You got to make that call. You got to, whatever that is. It is exhilarating. However, if you're going to take that step towards the next goal, you're not going to be successful 100% of the time. But the worst thing you could do is beat yourself up when you have had the courage to take the step and make a mistake.
Right.
That is debilitating.
Yeah.
And so the reason why I don't believe in the word failure is because if you can really just take a pause and look at this as information, like, okay, I have the courage, I'm going to make the call. I'm going to make the call that I want to be the assistant coach at UCLA gymnastics. Had he said no, I wouldn't take it personally. I would simply say, okay, what can I do next time? I really want this job. What can I do this next time around to give me a better result? And this is why I don't believe in the word failure at all. If you have learned one little teeny tiny bit from that mistake of how to have a different result the next time, you have actually grown and learned something. And if you've learned something, how can it be failure? It can't. So that word doesn't exist. We need to take it out of the dictionary and a lexicon.
Right. I mean,
You have this great balance of like analytical thinking with openness and compassion. I think that you referenced your brother as a scientist, or so it's in there. This analytical thinking, it's probably in there in your family. But you have this. It's a great balance because you can look at things, you can sort of break them apart, but you're not losing the emotion. You're not losing the humanity in it. It's great balance.
there's so much emotional intelligence as well.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. A big part of it came from having the mom that I had.
Mm.
That, I mean, she was, talk about unconditional love and so much fun. And life was so fun.
Mm.
And then when I was 54, I got diagnosed with breast cancer. And in the cacophony of noise of me hearing all this fear, how many more days do I have to live, and how am I going to tell my team, and is it going to be, am I going to lose my hair and the whole bit? I heard be anxious for nothing and grateful for all things. And you and your listeners may, I mean, you may translate that as to the universe speaking to me, or cosmic energy, whatever, however you translate that.
Yeah.
I translated it as God speaking to me. And I heard it twice: be anxious for nothing and grateful for all things.
Mm.
But I did not know how I was not supposed to be anxious, because I just gotten told I had a potentially fatal disease.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so I went to the doctor the next day, and she told me, had I been diagnosed 10 years earlier, they had absolutely nothing for treatment for me. And she would have said, I'm so sorry, go get your affairs in order. We have nothing for you. But because you're diagnosed in 2014, if you choose, and I love that word choose, it's one of my favorite words. If you choose to get chemotherapy for a year, and if you choose to have surgery, we know it's going to work.
Mm.
And it was in that moment I understood the commandment. How I was not going to be anxious was through gratitude. I got to get chemotherapy because I lived at a time that had chemo, and I live in a country that has chemo, and I have a job that's going to help me pay for the chemo. I got so excited that I got to get chemotherapy for a year. I called it going to my chemo spa,
Mm.
because a spa is someplace you go to feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And switching that one word, have to get to,
Yeah.
changed my entire life. Every moment of my entire life. So James, getting back to you and your therapy session right here. So when you make a mistake and you're going to want to beat yourself up, you just need to stop right there and say, you know what? I didn't have to do that. I got to do that. Because you're a living, breathing, vital, vibrant human being that had the courage to take a step. How cool is that?
Right.
Yeah.
That's when you say, yes, Miss Val.
Yes, Miss Val. Yes. Now I'm letting it sink in. I mean, there's so much there. There's like what resonated with me as well was the choose part, because there's a power in choice. And I think about being a survivor is that your power was taken away from you, and that even in whatever scenario you're in, you can stop and you can pause and you can say, I have a choice with how I'm going to react. I have a choice. And you sort of, instead of immediately reacting, you sort of, you take it in, you process it, and then you choose how to react. And that's right. There's a sense of power in that process.
Yeah.
One of my favorite books, Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl.
Yeah.
You know, he's a POW in Auschwitz, and he chose to find joy in the fact that he could see a sliver of the sky from the cell that he was in. And he attributes that to what kept him alive. That choice, I'm going to choose to find something to be grateful for. That's, I mean, the title of the book, Life is About Choice.
Yeah, it's an application of gratitude when you say, I get to, right? There's the application of gratitude, and then there's the power of choice. Those two things, those resonated with me.
Yeah, and it takes you from reacting to responding.
Right.
So when you put that time between the stimulus and your response, you're going to have a better outcome, a better result.
Right.
And it is a choice. And you know what? Some people choose to stay in the desert. They choose to stay in the anger. They choose to stay in the hurt. And I'm reading a great book right now. I read it before, Braving the Wilderness, Brené Brown, but
Love it.
I love it. I mean, she talks about when you minimize your anger, you minimize your pain. And so you need to be able to work with that anger, through it, to be able to come out on the other side versus staying in it.
But I feel like so often, at least for me, staying in it, whether it be pain or anger, when I've stayed in it, it's actually been because I've been running from it, right? Like I haven't been actually leaning into it and really trying to move through it. I've been trying to distract myself and keep it at bay, and whether knowingly or unknowingly pushing it down. And therefore it would just, metastasize and get bigger and bigger and permeate more and more aspects of my life and keep me stuck in it. Right. But then once, as you're speaking, once I learned to sort of fully own it, right? Yep. This is a real feeling I'm having right now. It's okay for me to feel this. It's okay for me to be in pain. It's okay for me to be in anger. Let's really lean into it. And therefore then I can move through it and transcend it to what's on the other side.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a choice.
Right.
Mhm.
It's a choice to do that.
And I think another nuance to it is that you can choose, like if you're in a situation and you're sort of analyzing it, you can choose for the moment not to do anything.
Right.
There might not be like a great action that you can take, but the action was pausing to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then going, okay, maybe now's not the best time to do something to change it, but it's there. And when there's a good time and it presents itself, and I've sort of realized that or noticed it, then I can do something. But there might not always be something to do, but the fact that you are thinking about it and choosing not to do something is power in and of itself.
The way we hurt ourselves is not giving us permission to be angry or to be in pain. And I had one of college coaches call me the other night. She was so pissed off at an athlete. And she was just like going off. And I'm like, whoa, okay, you are like angry. And she's like, uh-huh. And I said, okay. And I knew, there's no way I could say, this is ridiculous, just get over it. That's like, I hate it when people tell me that. Just get over it. No, I'm not going to just get over it. I can't just get over it because then it's going to fester. But I told her, I said, how long do you need to move to sit in the anger and then move through it? And she said, like time-wise? I'm like, yeah. I said, okay, it's 6:00 in LA. How much time do you need? She goes, okay, I'm going to sit in it for another hour and I'm going to start to move through it. And then I'm going to wake up tomorrow. It's going to be a new day. I said, great, do that. So She called me back laughing. She goes, that hour that I was pissed off was really fun, but I got it all out. I said, great.
Right.
You mentioned earlier about the desert. You referenced the desert. You also referenced that in your book as well. Can you speak a bit more about what the desert is? And as I think we've all been in the desert, some stay there a lot longer than others.
We do. The desert is when we either do something that was not really a good choice, or when someone does something to us, or when life just happens to us. And we get in the desert and we get down and depressed and sad and or pity. And we just keep walking in circles in that desert. And it's, once again, it's a choice, what we think. And we just keep ruminating on what this person did and what they said. I can't believe they said that about me. I can't believe they think that about me. I can't believe blah, blah, blah. And as long as you're choosing to continue to hit that replay button, even if it's you having done something stupid and made a mistake, as long as you're choosing to hit that replay button, you're going to stay in the muck of that desert. And at some point, hopefully, you take a pause, you take a breath, and you say, okay, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I'm going to get out of here. And you start taking the next right step to get out of the desert. And quite often, It is self-care and giving yourself grace. That, I really effed up, but I learned from it, and I'm going to move forward with a new day. And you just continue to get yourself out of that desert, because I think that we all end up in the desert multiple times until the day we die. It's not like you learn your lesson and you never go back to the desert.
Right. When you just said then about, giving yourself grace, owning up, like, I really effed up, I really made a mistake. It makes me think of, again, back to these roles, whether it be parent or coach or teacher. And I've experienced it first as a, teacher and choreographer. And then I experienced it as a parent, this idea that sometimes you feel like you have to have all the answers, right? And you have to be perfect all the time in that role, in order for the students or your child or whatever to respect you, to learn from you. When I've been able to allow myself to be vulnerable and honest, first and foremost with myself, and then the next big leap with my students or my child, it always turns into the most incredible connection and growth for both of us in this situation. So I just wonder how you've dealt with that as a coach or any other role in life, just that
Yes.
learning to be vulnerable with.
That is so good, Wade. That's so good. First of all, when I started coaching, I had the gift of not knowing anything. And I call it a gift because I had to ask questions. I couldn't pretend like I knew everything. So I had to ask 100 questions a day, which came from a place of vulnerability and humility.
Yeah.
But what I've learned in my coaching career and now teaching transformational coaching and leadership is that the biggest mistake parents, leaders, coaches, teachers make is thinking and pretending and posturing like they have all the answers. And I feel, and it's in my research I've done, the best leaders, the best coaches, the best parents are those who model the behavior that they would like to instill in the person whom they are leading. So as a parent, if you want your child to be able to own up to something they did wrong and apologize for it and be able to move on from it, then you model that behavior. When you have done something or said something wrong, you say, come here. I need to tell you guys something. This is what I did. And you model what a sincere apology sounds and feels like. And then you model, this is important, how to move on and not keep bringing it back. Because I think we all know, I think we've probably all been in relationships where you apologize and that person just keeps throwing it at you for years and years. Like, that's not fair.
Right.
I sincerely apologized.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I think that is one of the greatest teaching tools, is to model the behavior that you would like to see from your mentees. And I know that I would look for times that I could apologize to our team so that it came from a place of strength, and it made me stronger in their eyes.
Right. Yeah, it was so interesting for me for years in the past, before I disclosed the abuse and started this explicit healing journey. But as a choreographer or stage director, whatever I was doing, I definitely was living in that place where I felt like I always had to have all the answers, and I was terrified to be vulnerable. But at the same time, when I would experience being with or working with another leader, right, whether it was another choreographer or another director who was able and allowed themselves in a big position of power to be vulnerable and to be honest and talk about their mistakes, it always felt so amazing for me to witness that with them. And I knew that I never thought any less of them in the slightest. Actually, the opposite. I would think so much higher of them. But at that point, it was a double standard. Like, that was okay for them and I loved it for them, but I still couldn't do it at that point. Right?
Do you, and James, was there a moment where you chose to give yourself grace to start to move forward?
I don't know if I can think of one, but there was an experience that started happening for me, particularly in therapy, where in relation to giving myself grace, is that I had a hard time connecting with self. I had a hard time, whether it was little self or current self, I had a hard time forgiving myself. But what gave me that access point for me was my son. So if I was in a situation where I was having trouble connecting with self and giving myself any grace and love and compassion, I would imagine my son in that same situation, right? Mm-hmm. This kind of speaks to what you're talking about, like trying to teach them how you would want them to, treat themselves or others. But if I would think about my son in that, making the same mistake I made or that I thought I'd made, and think about how I would feel really towards him and what I would honestly say to him, it was so different than what I was feeling or willing to say to myself, right? So much more compassion, so much more understanding and love. And it was real, it was honest. And I really kind of learned this from Brene Brown as well. He mentioned it's like, well, what would it be like to treat myself like someone I love, like my son? So that gave me that access point to imagine it with him and then try that on for size with myself. And that became a new practice,
How you doing that?
Really good. I mean, in the sense that major progress, like big changes in that realm. I'm definitely kinder to myself than I've ever been in my life.
I think I have recently, just kind of go off that, I have recently connected with my younger self, which I was not able to, up until very recently. And it's a growing relationship, but I'm there for my younger self. Like I am able to love and embrace that person. It's this growing, it's just really happened very recently, but I imagine my younger self there with me, and I'm very comforting to him, and he's like, I'm there with him now. We've connected together. When I'm loving to him, I'm loving to myself as well. So I think there's something going on there that's happening with me now. Yeah.
For our Gold Over America tour, the gymnastics tour we just did, Caitlin Ohashi wrote a letter to her younger self. And we did a whole part in this for the tour. I mean, I've seen it probably 15 times. Every time I'm just sobbing. Stands and people are like this. And it's just to be able to write a letter to your younger self and give yourself that unconditional love. It's just, there's nobody better to give your younger self that than you.
Right. You're the only one who can do it now. Right?
Yeah. And it's like my younger self was crying out to me to give him love. And I'm the only one he's crying out to. But it's,
and you know what I think is, I get hung up on and I get frustrated with is, James, as much as you or Wade have told people your story, as much as you share it with your partners, as whomever, nobody will ever know the full depth of what you experience, the emotions. Nobody, you can't, as a human, you can't convey that to another human being fully.
Yeah. Right.
And that's why it's so important that we talk about, that you are the best person to be talking to your younger self. You're the only one that knows.
If we're talking about success and, defining success and what does that look like along the healing journey, we can all naturally gain hopes and expectations of timing and checking particular boxes in this healing, what it's going to look like to succeed at healing, and therefore then succeed as a human again, and can tend to be really harsh with ourselves along that journey if we don't feel like we're reaching those benchmarks either we've set for ourselves or we assume, or it's been explicitly set by others in society or loved ones. First, I just wanted to honor that I just think it's so applicable to the particular journey of the survivors, the healing journey as well. All of these pieces of defining success and not being too rigid with that, right? And being kind to self and vulnerable and open. So first, just to honor and thank you for that. And if there's anything else you want to say, just to speak to that journey of trying to achieve something in life as a human, and in this case for survivors, achieve whatever is their particular healing journey.
One thing that I keep thinking about, that when both of you have been talking about to your younger self and all that, I remember hearing Judge Aquilina, the judge who heard the impact statements of the Larry Nassar survivors. And I remember her simply saying over and over and over again, what would you like me to know? What would you like me to know? And James, as you were talking about, finally connecting with your younger self, I was thinking, gosh, I wonder what his younger self would tell him right now if he simply said, James, young Jimmy, what would you like me to know? And I think that's so powerful. When I have become friends with Judge Aquilina, and every time we talk about this, and when I get into a heavy place, I'll just go for a walk and I'll just say, okay, Valorie, what do you want me to know? And I'll just talk with myself about it and talk it with myself. And I do feel very, very strongly about the fact that unless one is mentally impaired, that we can control our thoughts. And every single choice that we make in life starts with our thoughts, which produce an emotion, which produce an action. And it's hard. Once again, it's a skill to feed the positive thoughts and to starve the negativity. But it is something that is a choice. And every single choice we make in life is going to have numerous repercussions. And what I've learned personally is that when I own that choice, that even when I screw up and make a poor choice that has poor repercussions, at least I'm not a victim in my own life. And it's okay to sit in the anger, the pain, the whatever, and to just know that every choice you're making is having an emotional response. And when you want to start shifting those thoughts, you're capable of doing that.
Yeah. Is there a balance between ignoring the thought, in which case it's just going to come back, and transitioning to accepting it's there, but I'm going to own this other process?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And it's very, very deep. My brain is like on fire right now trying to figure out exactly. But I think that as simple, I am not simplifying this, but it is very simple. It comes down to gratitude. And so many times during the day, I don't know, just through this whole COVID experience, through my retirement, not having an identity anymore, moving out of LA, like there's so much that's been going on personally for me the last few years. And I've been in this like lull of depression. And the only thing that has worked to lift that load is for me to sit in quiet time and truly enumerate what I'm grateful for. And then to act on it. And part of one thing that I'm grateful for is, and I always told my athletes this, let's talk about things you're grateful for that you've not earned. So I'm really grateful that I have a strong mind and a strong body, that I can get up right now and go for a walk. I'm really grateful that I don't live in an abusive household. My husband is very kind. Okay, what can I do about that? Go give him a hug and tell him thank you. Act on it. Act on that gratitude. So it's not just up here, but you're actually in action that's coming out, acting on your gratitude. And it's, the research is out now. The science is out. It does shift the chemicals in your brain. It does produce more dopamine. It does make you happier. It's not just a hard.
Right. And it seems like what you're talking, James, in relation to what you asked as well, that Miss Val, that you're talking about not ignoring the painful or negative thoughts, hearing them, letting them be heard, and then moving to the gratitude as well. So it's kind of honoring both, like accepting and owning the pain or the fear or whatever it may be, and then also moving to the gratitude. Yeah. So is it holding both? Yeah.
100%. I get very wrapped up in the atrocities of the world. I remember speaking to an officer that came back from like his 4th tour in Afghanistan. And I remember saying, I just felt so guilty living joyfully in the United States when you're over there doing what you were doing in Afghanistan. And he said, no. He said, if you're not living joyfully, you're dishonoring what we are doing for you, for your freedom.
What we're fighting for. Right.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, yes. And so getting back to what you're saying, Wade, I think it is important for us to take time and give a moment in prayer and meditation for the atrocities of what's happening in the world. And then to be able to move forward with even more gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not experiencing that here.
Right.
And live it fully.
You're not ignoring the thought, you're accepting it and then changing the perspective, putting the perspective in the gratitude. Gratitude's so powerful.
Miss Val, when you were talking about, you've been dealing with sort of these waves of depression and then taking yourself on walks and asking yourself, what do you want me to know? It kind of reminded me of your open door policy, right? But it's an open door policy for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think something that I've learned about myself that I really like about myself is I don't hold a grudge and I'm not judgmental. And so recently I've been like, well, then why don't you give yourself grace? Why do you judge yourself so harshly? If you don't judge others, like what you were saying, Wade, why judging yourself so harshly if you're not judging other people like that?
Yeah.
And it does just come back to shifting that mindset of like, one thing is, this sounds like a simple thing, but it happens multiple times a day. My husband is one of the nicest humans on the planet, and I can be a total brat. Mm-hmm. And there are times where I'm just like a brat. Mm-hmm. And my internal voice is like saying, you're 62 years old, stop it. Well, the only way I can really stop it is through gratitude. I'm really grateful that I'm married to someone who's nice. Now act on it. Mm-hmm. Go tell him how much you appreciate him. Go give him a kiss on the cheek. Go act on that instead of just being in your little head about it.
Right. Yeah. It's so easy for us to just stay focused on the one or two things that are quote unquote wrong at the moment, mm-hmm. and not focus on the 98 things that are great. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to have a dialogue, we all know how important it is to communicate. It's as important to communicate with yourself about that. Why am I feeling like this? Why can't I get over this? What do I need to do to move forward? What's, younger Valorie, what do you want me to know?
Yeah.
What I picked up from the book and also from this conversation is that there's a lot of action. You're taking action with things, and you express like a lot of agency in your life. You have power to go do something and then to go do it. And it's simple, but it's really powerful in that final step of taking an action. All right, I feel this way, or I'm doing it. Okay, and if it's, like you referenced, a simple thing is going to give my husband a kiss, right? There's an action that you're taking. It's a great lesson. Yeah, it's a great lesson. Yeah.
And you know what? It's like, I think that too often in life, we think things, kind things, but we don't really act on them or we don't force ourselves to be kind. And my granddaughter, my 8-year-old granddaughter the other day said to me, she goes, yeah, I noticed that you always compliment people. And I hadn't really noticed that. And I thought, well, I do. Because it's like, whomever I pass, I will say, that color looks great on you today. Wow. And just being kind, but not thinking it, acting on it. And then I told her, I said, you know what? It makes me feel good. Yes, it makes them feel good. It actually makes me feel better than it makes them feel.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
That act of kindness.
Yeah. And powerful to really say it to the person. Cause I feel like, yeah, either it's, we don't ever express it, that those kind thoughts, those loving thoughts, or often we'll express it to somebody else about somebody we love. Right.
Right.
Like in my case, if I was telling other people about how amazing my wife is,
Right.
it's like, okay, nice, but am I telling her, am I really
Right.
taking that step? Right.
And being now out of LA, I'm feeling like a little disconnected. And so I will send random texts to my friends or to my alumni or coaches. And I'll just say, just thinking about you today, you're making my heart sing, love you. That's it. And it's like that's that connection, just telling them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Change your day to receive
It
a
does.
random reach out from somebody like that,
And okay, so this is big, you guys. So now so many of us wait to see what life is going to hand us today. But by taking those small little actions throughout the day, you're actually taking control of your life.
Right. Right.
You're choreographing your life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Mic drop.
Boom.
Well, there it is.
It's so true. So true. It's so powerful. And, even referencing when you reference getting 1% better, right? These 1%, you're acting and you're making your day better 1% at a time, right? These little actions they all add up over time.
They do. It's hard to stay in a crappy ass mood when you're doing kind things for people.
Right.
Instead of waiting for people to do kind things to you, you're actually going to get a faster result if you just start doing kind things for other people.
Yeah.
That reminds me, my meditation teacher, one of my favorite quotes from him is, if you're not getting it, you're not giving it.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yes.
That's the idea you're talking about. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I had that conversation so often with our student athletes. Their girls can be mean and come in my office, someone would do the drop by and just, be sitting there whining and complaining. And Miss Val, I have no friends. And it was the same thing. I'd just say, listen, if you want to have good friends, you got to be a good friend. What does that look like to you? What is a good friend look? Okay, go be that. Go do that.
Right.
Don't wait for someone to be your friend for you to start being a good friend.
Yeah.
I'm just going to finish with this, that choreography, so many people think choreography is like movement to music, right? It is not. Choreography is any intentional movement. So that's why I always tell people, go choreograph your life. One little choice at a time.
Yeah, right. It's beautiful.
Well, Miss Val, thank you so much for your life so far, and your work so far. And that's why I keep saying so far, because I'm sure there's also so much more for you to do, some that and a lot that you don't know, right? What's coming. But just thank you for your contribution to art, to sport, and more or equally as important, to all of these young humans' lives. It's huge. It's a huge ripple in the pond. And I just really thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah. And thank you both for your courage. Helped a lot of people, and you will continue helping a lot of people.
Thank you.
Thanks, Valerie.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think people should definitely, if you haven't already, go check out Miss Val's TED Talk. It's called Why Winning Doesn't Always Equal Success, TED.com. And then where should people go to learn more about you, your work, what you're doing, what you're up to?
My website, officialmissval.com.
Officialmissval.com.
Officialmissval.com. I've been off of social media for a few years now, and it actually feels very good, but my website is up to date. All right, man. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Keep doing great work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you in person someday.
This is From Trauma
to Triumph.